So what does culture shock actually look like after year one? My goodness, it's been more than a decade for me. And if you ask me, and if you ask one other person, or any other person for that matter, you're going to get just as many answers, if not more. But what I can tell you is this. Most people think they're reasonable. But what they really have is just some kind of embedded cultural logic in their behavior and in their values and in the way they live. Or to say it another way, we're mostly culturally consistent. Not to say that there isn't reason qua reason, or there isn't such a thing as being reasonably behaved in public. Let me tell you a story. Maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about. My very first year here, my school had set us up with a pretty subpar bank. You'll find that this is not an uncommon experience when you're abroad, and the reasons why can oftentimes be pretty amusing. Usually it's because someone has a relationship with someone at another institution and they want to do them a favor, and so they give them some business. Problem is, if the business sucks, then who's left, bearing the consequences, right? Us at large. Well, we went to this bank and we had made a paycheck or two, and we want to transfer money back home. We have bills to pay, student loan payments, and also it's pretty understandable that any foreign national would want to keep the majority of their money in their home currency. Go into the bank with a number of my teaching cohorts, and we began to talk to the teller. We need to make an international transfer, we tell her, and her English is fine. No, she says, you can't. Okay, why not? Why not? A pretty reasonable question, right? Well, for some people, it's not a reasonable question at all. It's a jarring question, right? Because what it does is it faces someone with the proposition that they have failed, that they have declined you, and that they are incapable. It doesn't come as a pathway to solving a problem. It comes across as an accusation. And that is exactly what happened here. But let's back up. Why did the teller say no? This bank can make international transfers. It's a lot of paperwork. It takes them a couple hours. And that's why. Well, that's part of the reason. She didn't know how. So instead of telling us, I don't know how, let me find someone, she says no. Why? Why? And this is when I say that we are culturally consistent, because she is being culturally consistent. She has to say no in this situation. She says no, turns us away. We don't come back. Problem solved. She doesn't have a problem anymore, right? So we have a different cultural logic in terms of customer service. They don't care if they have our business or not. There's billions of people here. They don't need our business. Tons of banks we could go to. But not only that, she says no, she doesn't have to tell her manager that she didn't know how to do something. So we escalate. She says no. We say, we want to talk to your lao ban. We want to talk to your boss. And she starts fidgeting, looking uncomfortable, becoming more and more uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. And we're just waiting. We put the pressure on her. And that was another faux pas that we made. We caused her to lose face. We called her out. We said, I know your bank can do it. You just don't know how. Now go find out. In the West, we have a customer first logic. In the East, they have a saving face logic. And saving face is actually a universal value, because the reality is no one wants to be embarrassed in front of another person, in front of a family member, or in front of a stranger. It really is that simple. The difference is the difference of scale and the difference of the narrative structures that surround how face gets to be saved, or how someone's pride doesn't get assaulted. And those are the chief differences here. And those are some of the chief differences that distinguish the West from the East. The key here is that someone else's needs outweigh formal restrictions or formal structures. We rely a lot in the West on rules, on the ways of doing things. For instance, when you drive, you come up at a T and you look left to see if there's oncoming traffic. Why? Because we are all about the right of way. The right of way has every right, even if they're speeding, as long as it's not egregious. They have the right, and you can't pull out in front of them, and if they hit you, it's 100% your fault if you pulled out in front of them. Here, individual needs are at times placed above those formal structures. Let me tell you another bank story. I went to the bank. Again, my school switched banks. Actually, no, that's not true. I switched schools, and my new school had a much better banking scenario or situation, and I went there. I just needed to do something simple, maybe just exchange some cash for RMB or RMB for dollars or something like that. Took my number, sat down. I'm number 85, and I look up at the large marquee, and number 81 is up there. Good. And a bank was relatively peaceful. There's lots of older retired people around. By older retired, I mean they're at least 70, 75. Almost everyone at the bank. Very normal. Well, I sit there for 5 minutes and I see some people going up to the window. And the marquee has not changed numbers. Oh, that's interesting. I look down. Yeah, 85. Okay, up there. 81. Okay. I see some older people come in, and I see that they get a number from the security guard in the front. Security guards usually manage these kinds of things. And they don't sit down. They go directly to the teller while other people are sitting there in front of the teller, and they interrupt. They begin talking to the teller, asking questions. Soon as that person who was sitting there gets up, they sit down. And I realize, wow, I've been here 10, 15 minutes. Not a single bloody person has waited in line. Not a single bloody person. And you're faced with a couple choices. Your brain can break, and you can have a conniption, or you can go with the flow and say, okay, that's just how it is. And you kind of just ease your way in, and you cut line a little bit, and you do it yourself. Because you can't just wait and sit there, because no one is going to call your number. Nobody. The whole point is that logic is learned behaviorally, or logic is a behavioral phenomenon. And here I don't mean formal logic, obviously. I mean the way we operate in our society, the way we operate in our families and with our friends. Now, what does that have to do with culture shock? Well, with culture shock, and people would disagree with me, but with culture shock, you will be faced with mind-breaking scenarios that make no sense to you at all. No sense. And the shock is, first of all, that the thing is happening, and that's part one, the stimuli or the catalyst, and then there's the response. And the response is obviously your initial reaction. Do you have the kind of mind that can really handle this cognitive dissonance? You see scenarios like this all the time. Ooh, get on the metro sometimes, and there's very, very clear, bright yellow arrows. People getting on have arrows to enter from the edges of the door. People getting off of the metro or of the subway are to exit straight out the door. Makes a lot of sense, right? So people line up at the edges to enter in through the doors. People getting off of the subway car exit directly through where the center doors part. Makes total sense. Invariably, the closer you get to the outskirts of town, and sometimes it happens in the middle of town, you will have older, or most of the time, older people, generally who are from the countryside, who will be laden with bags or buckets or suitcases or whatever it is they're carrying. And they go and they just ignore the arrows, stand right directly in front of the doors. And for people who are used to the logic of even just foot traffic or translating driving traffic into foot traffic, that everybody has a place where they need to go, and you wait in order to go through those places and to exit those places and so forth, this is jarring. But it's not that big of a deal, right? These are just minor annoyances, aren't they? Well, as we said, the response can be one of three possibilities. It can be a compounding annoyance where you find yourself waking up one day shocked. Or it can be the initial reaction where you're like, what the heck is this place? No one really belongs here because nothing makes sense here. Or, and this can take some work for some people, and for other people it's very easy, you develop new logic signals. At least that's my trademarked phrase. You develop new logic signals. So you find ways to wrap that behavior, that phenomena, into a new and newly formulating narrative logic or structure. And you start to try to explain it to yourself. Okay, people do this because, people do that because. Even if you can't completely make it make sense, knowing that it makes sense to them and it's how other people operate is a start. The reality, though, is if you don't develop these new logic signals, you won't last abroad. If you don't engage in some cognitive dissonance, it doesn't mean that you have to behave in ways that you don't think are reasonable. But what it does mean is that you have to be considerate when you do see other people behaving those ways. Let me tell you another story. And this is one that will probably get some of you. I had a friend, and I've seen this a few times before, but I've never confronted anyone for it. He was walking down the street going to the metro with 3 or 4 other foreigners. And there was an older farmer gentleman standing next to the metro. Metro is a subway here. And he had a large stick, bamboo stick, maybe 2 to 3 inches thick. And it's kind of arching out like this with a string on the top, well, we should say rope. And tied to the bottom of that rope is a giant tortoise. And by giant, I probably mean it's 35 pounds. It's a big turtle, alive, right? Why? Because people eat turtles. So what's he doing? He caught it. He's selling it. So my friend confronts the man, essentially telling him, "You're trash. You are trash, and this is cruel, and you can't be doing this." And all sorts of other things. I'm not here to judge the man with the tortoise, and I'm not here to judge my friend, but I'm here to explain that if you don't have some degree of cognitive dissonance, and if you can't accept the differences between one logic structure and another, then your mind's going to break. You're going to find yourself being confrontational. disagreeable, you're not going to feel like you're ever at rest. You're always going to feel like you're being mentally assaulted. Going to the store will become an insurmountable task for you. So that's why I say that if you don't develop these signals, you won't last. It took me a while to realize this. But the reality is that if you view yourself in confrontation or in conflict with this narrative structure, this way of socially doing things in another part of the world, you realize that you don't belong there. And that can be a pretty benign statement, but for some people, it's abrasive. Because the reality is that system is moving, and it is a system, whether you understand it or not. And it is coherent, whether you understand it or not. In fact, it might even be more coherent than your system. It might have less cognitive dissonance for the participants than yours. At a minimum, you should recognize that your own system of thinking, your own way of operating the world, is at best inconsistent in many ways. And this will help you to have a little bit of humility when you look at another system. You can't change it. And I wonder if you should even try. You don't have to participate in it. But in a country of millions, tens, or hundreds of millions, or billions of people, the idea that you're going to change something that you disagree with as an outsider is kind of a joke. So the real question is, how do you find yourself there? And it's kind of what our next episode is going to be about. So, as I said, there are only 3 real options when you're faced with this. Number 1, cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, and if you haven't got the idea of what that is yet, you just have to think, you got to have another way of thinking about stuff. And you got to be okay with it not making perfect sense. There's really no other way to approach it. The second option is to allow the phenomena to weigh on you. And this is not a great solution. Do I have to explain it? I mean, you've all, I'm sure, like me, been in situations where you're under some kind of discomfort day to day, either through someone with whom you work or something you've done that is bothering you, that is unresolved. It doesn't resolve itself. And oftentimes it just compounds. And the final option, and this is viable, but it's not ideal. You can develop an enclave of people who are just like you. And if you're going to do that, I just have to ask you why you're still abroad in the first place. Why not just go home? If you're just going to hang out with people who are just like yourself all the time, going to live somewhere else in another part of the world, why are you there to begin with? It's worth asking. It's not an accusation. I think really that only one of these answers is sustainable long term. Only one of them. And I'm pretty sure you know which one I think that is. So I'm going to leave you with a question. Can you view with kindness and humility those who are so different from you? And can you engage in some kind of cognitive dissonance? When they're hoiking loogies on the ground and they have their kids' pants pulled down, pooping on the sidewalk. Because that's the real test of your ability to withstand that first year of culture shock. I'll see you next time when we talk about who you become when you move abroad.